with that, let's move on to the three main insights for today. And I want to talk about the very first one. The very first one will be the mistakes made when planning for two asset classes. Number two will be the strategy and methodology to own one HDB and one condo. Because I can understand from a lot of home owner's point of view, especially if, let's say, you currently already have a HDB, or you are in a season that you can perhaps maybe you just start off in the working professional world. You can only start off with a HDB first, which I totally understand because I owned a HDB before when I was young. I just got married, settled down, and that's the only property that I can afford for my family. And with that, how can you forward plan so that in the next maybe 5 to 10 years time, you can have the right kind of planning and structure to own an additional property. And sometimes HDB is a little bit like comfort food. We want to make sure that, you know, we continue to hold on to this property because it's a very low maintenance property in terms of my monthly commitment. And the rental yield is one of the best rental yield in Singapore because I can get a high rental yield compared to a private property. And of course, number three is to see how can I solve current roadblocks. For example, these 5 groups. The very first group is that if I already own HDB in 2 names, myself and my partner, or I've already booked a BTO in 2 names and I'm waiting for the keys. Number 3, I really have emotional attachment to my current HDB because my kids grow up here and I want to keep this HDB, but I want to buy another condo. Number 4, I am ready to commit to another condo, but I'm a little bit afraid of investing in the wrong condo. And number 5, of course, is I'm not sure if, let's say, I want to go for a BTO or resale, and I'm in a season that I have not committed to anything yet, but I'm just not sure whether should I go for BTO because maybe the waiting time of 4 years plus another 5 to 10 years, or should I just go straight for resale HDB? And I have a longevity plan to own 2 assets. Now, let's have a very first look at the first part of this webinar, and I hope that you stay tuned with us all the way until the end because right until the end, what's going to happen is that as we progress through these 3 main components of this webinar, I believe after this webinar you will have clarity and you will be in a better and much better position to make a wise decision to plan forward for your property journey. Now, to address this first insight, the very first point I think that we need to discuss about and share is that why are we even talking about this topic? I believe you signed up for this webinar for a particular reason, is that you want to gain clarity, or maybe you are in a dilemma stage, or maybe you have already have discussion as a family already. Like for example, you are speaking to your partner, hey hubby, or maybe darling, should we really sell our HDB because you know a lot of our friends have told me that you know the HDB property cannot sustain in terms of value, it is aging, and maybe in future if you want to sell, it will not appreciate much in value. Or maybe you're in a dilemma, hey, you know, I've just fulfilled my MOP of my BTO, and I've just fulfilled that 5 years, and this HDB is still so new. We have just renovated it 5 years back. We love the location. It's very sayang to sell off this property. And what if I buy the condo and next time I have difficulty maybe because, you know, of job insecurity, and I'm going to feel a little bit stressful to maintain the monthly installment and things like that. So let's talk about this very first topic first, is that why should we even think of planning for our future? And I think this question really is something of a very forward planning kind of point of view, because why should we even invest in another property or plan our property holdings wisely? Why can't we just renovate? Not say renovate. Why can't we just buy a HDB, or let's say existingly we have a HDB, we just renovate and re-renovate our HDB nicely and live there forever? Actually, last time, my dream home is a HDB maisonette. And I didn't end up with a HDB maisonette. Later, I'll share with you why. I ended up with a jumbo property in the past. Well, of course, I sold it already. And I always love the concept because it's a little bit like a landed property. Some of the maisonettes, you can create 4 bedrooms. Some are 3 bedrooms upstairs. And of course, most of the time they have an additional room downstairs, and this is the only property that you have 3 bathrooms, because you have 2 bathrooms upstairs, you have 1 bathroom downstairs, and it's perfect for a huge family, and it feels great. Now, also note that I'm not against ownership or holding on to a HDB. I'm not against holding on to a HDB. I believe that a HDB property is a great starting point to every family, and HDB property is great in terms of space. It is also great for starting out, and I think it is the bridge to long-term property planning. And the rationale, of course, is that I think HDB is a great blessing for the entire Singapore community, because our government has this foresight. If not, we wouldn't be 90% home ownership rate, which is one of the highest in the world. And almost everybody have access to very good and affordable public housing. So it is meant for own stay, it is meant for living, and I'm not against it. However, I want to share with you my journey through this video on NOTG. If you have not seen it, scan on this QR code that will link you to this video. It's one of a very popular video that gained quite a fair bit of viewership when it was launched. It was my life lesson all the way from my first 4-room HDB. I sold it. I tried to time the market during Lehman Brothers. And back then, I just started out as a brand new realtor. I didn't understand about property investment. I just want to do sales, and I didn't study the market. Ended up, I was priced out of the market. I actually wanted to buy a private property, but end up, I was in such a dilemma. And I believe many of you perhaps shared that dilemma that I had, and you have this dilemma now, and which is why I always share with my clients, I understand the dilemma, because I went back to buy a jumbo HDB. And from then on, I went through a journey investing in residential, overseas, commercial. I eventually sold off my HDB jumbo. And of course, from there on, a lot of cooling measures has already kicked in. We have 15 rounds of cooling measures, and now I own private properties, and I no longer own HDB. And later, I'm going to share with you some case studies along the way as well on how we can structure this. Now, my point of sharing with you my journey was just really to share that I understand the mindset and sometimes the confusion that we have from owning a HDB property as a HDB owner, but at the same time, we also want to plan forward. Now, I believe that every family and every property owner have 4 seasons, and this will relate to our topic today. The first season is that we're in the spring season, usually 25 to 35 years old. If you want to understand more about season, head on to NOTG. We talk about that in depth in the latest episode of me, Jeslie, and Junwei. All right. So very quickly, 25 to 35. The recommended investment appetite should be aggressive because your life commitments are low. You might have children, you might not have. You are starting out and you are chonging your career. It should be a capital gain strategy. Now, once you are 35 to 45, that is where your life commitments are stacking up. You start to have your car, your kids, your property. You still want to be aggressive because this period is also the period that you have the highest income producing power. And you are still young. And banks favor youth. They favor you having longevity up to 65 years old, which is the cutoff point of loans. And of course, there's another topic is that you can refinance to 75. That's another topic on how do you calibrate leveraging a mortgage and stuff like that. I wouldn't touch on it today, but in summary, this part need to cut out a little bit. But in summary, the summer season is your highest earning power potential season, and you should treasure this season. This is also a season that a lot of people will be in a dilemma because you already fulfill your HDB MOP and you're thinking, what's next? And when you see property prices being escalated on a year-to-year basis, sometimes it can get a little bit anxious. Like, will I ever be able to afford a 3-bedroom condo or 4-bedroom condo so that, my kids can have a little bit of facilities? And of course, I'm also seeing that, my friends who own like a 3-bedroom condo in the OCR region, suburban region, just across my HDB apartment, they're seeing so much more gains than my HDB property. The autumn season is when you need to be a little bit more mid-aggressive, not too aggressive, 45 to 55. That's when your kids are starting to go into their teenage years. And of course, the final season, 55 to 65, before you head on into full retirement, is what we call the winter season. That is the time you need to restructure to be more defensive, have more liquid assets, mark down your mortgage, mark down your commitments. And that's how we plan for our clients. So, this is the typical Singaporean route. The typical Singaporean route is that usually we start off at 28 years old. BTO, some of you started earlier. I started very early. I got married at 24. I got my property immediately after my ROM. And I owned my first property at 24. And it was a 4-room resale HDB. I took the grant. It was great. And usually when somebody go for BTO, 4 years later or 5 years later, depending on the construction stage, you get your keys, and then 5 years later, you fulfill your MOP. Of course, now the plan is different. I'm touch on it later on the Standard Plus Prime BTO plan, all right? Because now the MOP is lengthened to 10 years for Plus and Prime. Standard HDB, not near MRT, is still 5 years. Now, then they go through close to about the next 20 years of their family building years. And they focus on their career and their kids, sending kids to classes, worrying about a PSLE, O-level and stuff like that. And sometimes life gets busy. And there's also a time when you hit towards your 40, your old folks at home, dual side, your in-laws and your old folks, they start to get older. You want to, spend a bit more time caring for them, their health and stuff like that. And everything gets stacked up. And most of the time, because of a lot of things that are happening in life, a lot of families fail or they forget to plan, to calibrate for their defensive stage. And this is a time that usually they put off decisions and they do not plan forward. And they will just lay off decisions year after year. And sometimes when age catch up, by the time you really want to make a final decision, that is when you are nearing to 55 before your retirement account is being created and some of the OA funds are locked up. And a lot of people make their final decision at about 54. And then they start to downgrade to a smaller HDB. So I'm going to share with you some quotes, and I'm going to talk about the mistakes. Now, with this quote, that you can still buy back a HDB during your winter season, what am I trying to refer to is that mistake number one is that sometimes we think that we started at age 28, and let's say you own a BTO, 32, by the time you are 37, you hit your MOP. But because of the lack of information, the lack of analysis, the lack of correct, unbiased advice, you might think that, hey, I want to hold on, I don't want to do forward planning. And then you didn't know about the options that are available, and you decide not to take action. What's going to happen is that sometimes we think that we want to continue to hold on to the HDB all the way. And with that, actually the new kind of, I wouldn't say it's a new, but I would say a different perspective is that if, let's say for example, now you're staying at a 300 over series Punggol Enclave HDB, and you really love the environment, you love the neighbors, you love the amenities and all that, and you're thinking that, hey, I really love this property, but you're stuck with two names. And you know that if you want to buy another condo, which you have the ability, there's going to be some calibrations that are needed. Number one is that you have to pay ABSD because two names are in the HDB. And this is considered first property holding by two owners. ABSD is that 20%. So imagine you want to buy a condo, which is $1.5 million, for example, let's say a 3-bedder also in the same district 19, all right? This is going to be 300,000 ABSD. Now, take note, there's also another thing to calibrate is that your LTV for this second property is going to be affected if your HDB is not fully paid. If it's not fully paid, you cannot get the 75% loan. You can only get 45% loan. So you have to down pay 55% and you have to pay a 20% ABSD. In combination is 75% plus another BSD of 4%, and that will make it 79%, which is technically not feasible. Why? Why is it not feasible? Because when you look at 79% of this, is already about $1 million odd already. All right? And in my perspective is that you shouldn't pay ABSD, and you shouldn't do that. Of course, later I'm going to share with you one plan is that Some people choose to bite the bullet and pay ABSD and use the rental of the HDB to pay back the ABSD over the next 7 to 8 years, which is doable as well, but it depends whether you want to bite the bullet. Most of the time, if you are stuck in this situation, with 2 names already in the HDB, a lot of people would then choose to sell. But to sell is an emotional struggle because maybe you really love this particular HDB enclave. But the new perspective is that, what if you can come back at age 55 or 65 and buy back the same HDB block? So let's say this is 4-room. Why don't you come back and buy back the same 300 series Pongo 4-room? So this is the new perspective that I would like to share with you regarding mistake number 1. Mistake number 1 basically is being very attached, and I can understand. I still miss my jumbo flat as well. Being attached to basically the location, the type of flat, and this is what we call the familiarity effect. Sorry for my handwriting. My handwriting is very jalat, all right. Familiarity effect. We are too familiar with this location. We are too comfortable already, and we really miss this. And of course, sometimes I ask my kids, like, they still miss the jumbo flat. But after a family discussion, I share with them the perspective from investment angle. We know that if we continue to stay in our jumbo HDB, it's going to depreciate, or it will stagnate, or it will appreciate a little bit only, but it's going to be aging all the way for the next 20 years. Similarly, your HDB is going to age in the next 20 years. From 37 to 55, it's going to age. And if you have this new perspective, basically you can buy back any HDB that you want. After you complete your cycle of buying private properties, you let the capital expand, and you have the ability to then downsize. And then you can have more options to divest into other more liquid assets, just like what Daniel and his family has planned out. This is mistake number 1. Let's have a look at the next one. Number 2 is in conjunction to the new BTOs that are being out in the market. So number 2 is to know that you cannot buy back your spring, your summer, and your autumn season. Let's come back to the whiteboard again. Now, banks favor your age. So when you are 28, maybe when you're just starting out, you didn't have the ability to buy a private property. So you go for maybe a resale HDB, 33. Or maybe you collected keys at 33 for your BTO. This is resale. And then you fulfill another 5 years, 38. This time, MOP for a BTO route. This is for a resale route, you MOP. Take note that when you're in your 30s, most of the time, you're in your highest income producing age. Because you're figuring out before 30, after 30, perhaps you've already grown to like a senior specialist or maybe a manager role or management level. You're in your highest income producing age, and your loan tenure is up to 65. And the max loan tenure is 30 years. So basically, you take 65 minus 33, you can still loan 30. And if you refinance, you can go up to 39. That's another topic. From 38 to 65, you can still loan 27. And when we look at this, basically with TDSR as the income determinant of your loan quantum, this decreases with your age. You are only able to own lesser and lesser as you age. Your tenure is going to shrink. Your installment is going to increase. So somebody that is younger, buying the same $2 million property is going to pay a smaller amount of installment compared to somebody that is older, even though it's the same property price, because they can stretch the tenure longer. And at the same time, you need to continue to earn more and more to qualify for more loan, which sometimes might not be the case. So what is going to happen is that you need to think through on really capitalizing on your best income producing years during your spring, your summer, and basically your autumn season. That's the most important thing. And that's mistake number 2, is that failure to recognize that your best income producing years are the most important. And sometimes by the time you're in your late 40s or 50s, then you want to really leverage and think about getting the next loan for the next property. Then sometimes you'll see that, hey, why is the quantum so little? and then you have to go into like pledging, unpledging, and that kind of stuff. But with a younger age, you can take decision at the 30s or your early 40s, then that could be a very viable solution for you. So that's mistake number 2. And in summation, basically, is that do not waste your highest income producing years. Now, mistake number 3, let me move into it. Mistake number 3 is in conjunction to the new ruling. So this was being announced during National Day Rally. 2 main things that was being announced. The 3 types of BTO flats, standard plus prime. And of course, no longer classifying mature and non-mature estate. All right? So basically, when I look at this, the main change is that there's going to be like a mix of BTOs that are standard plus prime across different regions in Singapore, and not really classifying our estates into mature or non-mature, because we are technically already quite mature as a country. This is a very important thing that you have to take note. If, let's say, you belong to a season that you're deciding between BTO and resale, because this will then affect your plan to own 1 HDB and 1 condo. So when you look at this, and I'll come back to the whiteboard later because it's a very important thing to understand. If now you go for a BTO standard, this is the only type of BTO that will allow you, firstly, to have the benefit to rent out after you hit the MOP. And it only has an MOP period of 5 years. Plus, are properties that are near to the MRT stations. The BTO near the MRT has an MOP of 10 years. And you cannot rent out the property. So I just need you to focus on whether can you rent out or don't rent out, because this is an important strategy for owning 1 HDB and 1 condo. The reason you want to own a HDB and a condo is because you want to rent out your HDB to collect the high rental and pay for the HDB mortgage, plus, of course, your condo mortgage. And how are you going to do that? I'll come to part 2 later. Prime are premium locations in prime parts, maybe in Tanjong Pagar, Kallang, near to MRT, solid location, 10 years MOP, and you cannot rent out.